Hi, I'm Damien, and I'm here to show you the next step in our process. Over the last few steps, we showed you some of the tools that we use, and we'll get in more detail as we go to use those tools. The next step we were talking about is, basic distance of wiring. So we figured out about 180 inches, 200 inches of wire for your primary to go back to your starter, and your the solenoid wire for the starter. Everything needs to go from the engine bay to your dashboard is about 180 to 200 inches. You can be more direct if you want. We're doing it to save time and just so people at home don't get too caught up in the small details, trying to make things as simple as possible. The next step is the fuse panel. We got this one out of an older Isuzu from the 90s. Very, very basic setup. So all we did was just chop it, at least about a good 6 inches so you have something to play with later on. We took the tape off of it, and that's about as far as we've gotten. So what we're going to do now is show you how to plan out your fuse panel. Now, newer cars, the relays and solenoid, there's a lot of different mechanisms on a car that are actually integrated in your fuse panels. And we don't want that. I mean, it'd be nice to have that technology, but for the viewers at home, we need to be able to make things as simple as possible for you to make your own fuse panel. Okay? So what we have here is a very basic panel. There's 3 rows. I call them tiers. Now they go in the back, and it's just a big mess, So the first thing you can do is go on top and look for the big fuse you'll see. Some may have 2, some may have 3. We don't know. This one right here only has 1 primary. This is more than enough for our air-cooled projects. I mean, the most draw that we'll ever have will be 15, 20 amps, I imagine. And that's with like radios blaring, heater on, auxiliary fan in the back blowing. I mean, there's not a lot of power draw on your guys' buses and Beetles. So on the back, we turn over and we see that there's our big fuse panel, and there it is right there on the back. So we're going to pull the big wire back, and we look on the back, and you'll see how the fuse is following the length of the fuse, the panel surface. So we know for a fact that this is our primary wire. So we go in the front, we now know we have these 2 wires isolated that power this fuse. So this will be, what will be switched to the relay to, turn on all the power to the back of the vehicle. And the way that we wire this is actually different than what the books tell you, but with this way you can put a kill switch and it'll be a lot harder to steal. Whereas with most air-cooled vehicles, it's very, very easy to bypass even decent security systems. So we're going to make it to where it's a little bit harder to steal, easier to work on in the future, and a lot easier to trace when mechanics don't know your particular vehicle, which is great when you're out of town. So we're going to go back to the back, and we can see our 3 tiers, our 3 pillars. There you are, 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. So what we're going to do right now is go ahead and peel back our first layer like an onion. And we know for a fact that our big wires will always be the feed wires. Now, in a normal vehicle, these big power wires go to a relay panel. It's on a different panel on a newer vehicle, which is powered by the key switch. But we don't need all of that. You only need 1 key switch and a couple of relays. We want to keep things as simple as possible so you have less expensive to buy parts, and it's easy for you to deal with it in the future. Not that you'll ever have to. So we only have 2 wires coming in, but we got 3 wires coming out, so something fishy's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to look closer. And what we got here is a little bridge. You look inside next to that blue wire to the left, there's a piece of metal that connects to make this last... Sorry, got injured hands here. So between this blue wire and here, there's a piece of metal way inside there that's connecting them together. I call them bridges. There's probably a better term for it, but that's what we're going to call it. So that bridge powers up the circuit, so this red wire is feeding off of this blue wire. So what I like to do is I like to do color codes. I like to say, well, my blue wire on pillar 1 feeds the brown with white stripe and the red with green stripe. And you just do that on each one. You don't know where they're going to go yet. You don't know what you're going to do with it, but it's just nice to have that written down. So when you go to draw out your diagram to match up to your new fuse panel, you know what circuits run off of a bigger wire, so you know what to put your bigger loaded ampere circuits on. Like you wouldn't want to put your headlights on 1 power wire coming in and 5 outputs out. You want to do headlights on a very one-to-one basis. You know, your headlights and your taillights are one of your highest drawing electric components on your bus or Beetle. So these are things that we'll show you later on, but right now we're just, you know, getting an idea of what we have to work with. So pillar 1 has 2 wires coming in and 3 wires coming out. We're able to see the bridge in between that connected to the 3rd wire. So we know when we write this stuff down that, you know, blue wire feeds red and the brown, and the white with the blue stripe feeds the green with the black. Very easy stuff. You go to the next pillar, and we peel back the next layer of wires. And what we got here, we got a whole bunch of wires on one pillar. So we have one power wire and another one, these black and yellow ones. So as we go to look closer, we see our little bridges in there again. So this one black wire is feeding 1, 2, 3. It's feeding 3 wires. Well, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we look closely at your fuse panel, you'll notice that, you know, it won't be the same as mine, but you'll be able to identify the prongs in relation to the fuses up front. So on my particular one, I've got this one black and yellow wire feeding these 4 wires through little metal bridges and connectors in between. They all link together. And then this one big wire feeds its own circuit. So I like to write all this stuff down so later on when I go to plan out my Volkswagen diagram, I can just look up to the small diagram I have for my fuse panel and be able to figure out right away, you know. I'll do on my particular vehicle, this will be my radio. I mean, radio only needs a simple setup, so 1 power wire coming in, simple wire coming out. This is just a perfect fuse to have as your radio. You know, I've got this one out here with the 1 wire coming in and 4 coming out. This is perfect for running lights and your turn signals. It's just perfect. So we go down to the next layer, and we have others. We have 2 wires coming in, which are power, and it looks to be the same thing. We have 1 circuit by itself, and then these 4 wires, or 3 wires, are powered by, or 4 wires are powered by this one over here. Now this is interesting. This particular situation has, you know, a pretty heavy gauge, like a 6-gauge wire feeding, you know, these 4 wires, and I think that you've got 1 decent-sized wire and 3 here. So I mean, this could be a good dashboard illumination setup for this big wire, and then, you know, whatever else you got going on, whether you got like a little extra fan or something like that. So that's basically how we have our fuse panel. Now your fuse panel may have much more wires, and you want to minimize that. Go to the junkyard and just find something that's small. I mean, you don't need to even have 3 tiers. To be honest, a big fuse and 2 tiers would be enough. Now you can go to local performance shops, and they actually sell fuse panels that are set up for just what you're doing. I know for a fact that Painless sells them. They're very inexpensive. It's about $30, I do believe, for the fuse panel, brand new with the leads coming out, and it makes it a little bit simpler. We paid $10 for this, you know, all said and done, and I couldn't be happier. It's even got threaded, you know, threaded metal in these tabs. So when I go to make my little tabs in the Volkswagen, it fits up very nicely. I look forward to installing this. We'll start the next episode will be about how to go ahead and put your diagram from your Volkswagen into what works with this. Until then,